Up first, a massive tragedy in our immediate neighbor Bangladesh. A fire in a six-storey shopping mall in capital Dhaka killed at least 45 people, injured dozens of others. Firefighters say the fire began in a popular restaurant on the first floor of the mall in a busy commercial district at the heart of the capital, and that many people were trapped by the flames. Fire service authorities say there were no safety measures in the building despite 3 notices that were sent to the owners.
A blaze in a 6-storey building in Dhaka, leaving at least 45 people dead. More than a dozen firefighting units rushed to the Green Cozy Cottage shopping mall. Firemen struggled for nearly 2 hours before the inferno was brought under control. People dining out and shopping suffocated or jumped to their deaths as firefighters battled to douse the flames. According to eyewitnesses, the blaze began in a restaurant, Kachi Bhai, in the building at around 10 p.m.
আমি যখন জানতে পারছি তখন 2 তলায় আগুন ছিল। আমরা ছাদে চলে গেছিলাম। ছাদে আমরা 30 জনের মতো ছিলাম। 30 জনের মতো ছিলাম। আগুন নিভানোর পরে ফায়ার যে লোকজন ছিল ফায়ার সার্ভিসের পুরো এক সাইড হয়ে তারপর আমরা বের করছি।
Though the cause of the blast is yet to be determined, investigators are pointing towards a gas or stove leak leading to the fire. 75 people were rescued and dozens were brought to the Dhaka Medical College. Anxious relatives like Shelly rushed to the hospital to find loved ones. Shelly lost her sister and niece in the blaze.
ঢোকার 10-15 মিনিটের মাথায় এই দুর্ঘটনাটা ঘটে। সাথে সাথে ওর হাজবেন্ডকে ফোন করে জানায় যে আমরা এখানে খেতে আসছি, আগুন লাগছে, আমরা আটকা পড়ে গেছি, তাড়াতাড়ি তুমি আসো। ওরা গেল। এরপরে আমরা সবাই কন্ট্যাক্ট করার অনেক চেষ্টা করলাম, মা মেয়ে দুজনকে, কিন্তু কেউই ফোন ধরে না।
Bangladesh Health Minister Samantha Lal Sen said that the toll could rise since several critically injured people were being treated in 2 government hospitals. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina expressed shock and sorrow over the incident. The government has set up a 5-member panel to investigate the incident. Fires are common in densely populated Dhaka, where many new buildings have sprung up, many without adequate safety measures. In July 2021, many children were among 54 people killed at a food processing factory outside Dhaka, while at least 70 were killed in a February 2019 fire in Chowk Bazaar in Old Dhaka. Bureau Report, NDTV.
News now from Gaza, and there's been condemnation across the world after Israeli troops in the northern Gaza Strip opened fire on Palestinians scrambling for food aid on Thursday. India too has expressed deep shock over this incident. It was a chaotic incident that the health ministry of Gaza said killed more than 100 people. Israel though claims that the deaths were due to a stampede, and now oil price rise is expected with Gaza's ceasefire talks in trouble after this latest incident.
Shifa Hospital in Gaza City flooded with the dead and injured. Brought in after Israeli troops fired on a crowd of Palestinians waiting for aid. More than 100 people were killed and hundreds injured.
We ran towards the food aid to get some. The soldiers and tanks fired at us. The people in the front and back were shot, some in the hand and others in the legs. We left the food and aid and ran.
Israel claims that the deaths were due to a stampede. They allege a massive crowd of Palestinians attacked the trucks, resulting in the deaths. The White House has reached out to Israel to investigate the matter.
We're, of course, very saddened to hear about this loss of innocent lives. Too many civilians have been killed in Israel's military operations. The White House has been in touch with the government of Israel to ask that they investigate immediately to learn about more about what happened.
Palestine's envoy at the UN accused Israel of deliberately killing innocent aid seekers.
It seems that they were large in number, thousands, and then all of a sudden the Israeli army started firing at them and shooting, and according to the information that we have, dozens of them have bullets in their heads. It's not like, firing in the sky to restrain people if there was confusions and chaos. It was intentionally targeting and killing.
With no sign of a ceasefire, scenes like this from Gaza City of hundreds of Palestinians gathered around fires at night waiting for the arrival of aid trucks haunt the tiny strip of land that's home for them but a war zone for Israel. With Kartikeya Bhattacharya, Bureau Report, NDTV.
And the killing of the Gaza aid seekers, which has caused shock around the world, has also cast a cloud, as one can imagine, over the ceasefire talks that were underway. There was a proposal for a 40-day ceasefire. Here's a report.
My national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
US President Joe Biden raising hopes of a breakthrough, indicating that a ceasefire is merely days away, as negotiators in the Israel-Gaza war race against time. At stake are the lives of more than 1.5 million innocent civilians in Rafah. The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, a key mediator, also urged for a ceasefire.
While we race against time to return the hostages to their families, we must put an end to the suffering of the Palestinian people.
This proposed 40-day truce would be the first extended pause in the 5-month-old war. So what are the terms of this deal? Agencies report that both sides will stop all military action for 40 days, with Israel moving its troops away from densely populated areas in Gaza. This pause is subject to Hamas releasing 40 Israeli hostages, excluding men of military age. In exchange, Israel would release 400 prisoners. Israel would allow 500 trucks a day of humanitarian aid into Gaza, along with 200,000 tents and 60,000 caravans for the displaced. Lastly, fuel and equipment to rebuild hospitals and bakeries will be allowed into Gaza. Yet, Netanyahu's post-war plan for Gaza is a hardline pitch, with Israel running the strip indefinitely. This goes against the positions of Israel's allies as well as the Arab governments who support the two-state solution with a reformed Palestinian Authority governing the region.
We are going to continue to be very direct with the government of Israel, both privately and publicly, that we think that their settlement program is both an obstacle to peace and inconsistent with international law.
On Monday, Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammad Shateh and his government resigned over what's being called the genocide in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority remains largely unpopular in Gaza and West Bank over allegations of corruption and has been facing US pressure to reform its governance in the West Bank and create a structure that can govern Gaza after war.
The new government will be seen as a government that will take responsibility both in West Bank and Gaza, because West Bank and Gaza should be seen and treated as one territorial unit. The time now is not for a government where Hamas will be part of it, because if in this case, then it will be boycotted by a number of countries as it happened before.
Statements by Biden and Netanyahu highlight that two of the closest allies in this conflict have different visions of war. Biden maintains a temporary ceasefire gives leeway to move in a direction where the dynamics can be changed to move towards a longer-term settlement. while Netanyahu reiterated that the Rafah invasion may somewhat be delayed if a deal comes through, total victory remains the ultimate goal. With Disha Bagchi, Bureau Report, NDTV.
And from the war in Gaza now to the war in Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin has told Western countries that they risk provoking a nuclear war if they send troops to fight in Ukraine, also warning that Moscow had the weapons to strike targets in the West. So a warning there. And meanwhile, on the Indians who are stuck in Russia, the Ministry of External Affairs said earlier this week that several Indians who worked as support staff to the Russian army have been discharged following India's demand, many of them expected to return soon.
A distraught Kashmiri family awaiting the return of their son from the Russian war in Ukraine. "31-year-old Azad Yusuf was allegedly lured by an agent on the pretext of a well-paying job. He ended up on the Ukrainian border with a gunshot wound in his foot. His family says Azad was forced to fight the war.
We are requesting the government of India कि उनका सेफ रिटर्न हो जाए, सेफली ये अपने अपने घर में पहुंच जाए. जो भी हिंदुस्तान का बच्चा है, सारे हिंदुस्तान के बच्चे सेफली घर पहुंचे.
Azad is one among the dozens of Indians who were hoodwinked to fight for Russia in the deadly war. Hemil Ashwinramaswami, a 23-year-old youngster from Gujarat, was reportedly killed in an airstrike in the Donetsk region on the Russia-Ukraine border on the 21st of February. Hemil was a Surat resident and hired as a security helper by the Russian army. He left home in December after he secured a job through a recruitment agent, only to find himself in the midst of a conflict he never anticipated. Mohammad Sufia, another 23-year-old from the Narayanpet district, is the second youth from Telangana to find himself caught in the Russian war with Ukraine. In a video message to his family along with others from India, Sufia said, and I quote, "We were cheated." He was also lured with the promise of a rupees 1.5 lakh per month job.
वो लीगल थ्रू ही गए, वो लीगल थ्रू गए. इसमें ना मिलिट्री का प्रॉब्लम है वहाँ के, ना गवर्नमेंट का प्रॉब्लम. वहाँ जो एजेंट्स जो थे बीच के, ये एजेंट्स उन लोगों से गलत पेपर वर्क कराए. आर्मी हेल्पर और सिक्योरिटी जॉब बोल के जो सिग्नेचर कराए, एक्चुअली वो जो था आर्म फोर्स के लिए था.
The Ministry of External Affairs said earlier this week that several Indians who worked as support staff to the Russian army have been discharged following India's demand.
We have an understanding something like 20 odd people are stuck. We are trying our level best for their early discharge. We have issued 2 statements which you saw. We've also told people not to venture in the war zone or get caught into situations which are difficult.
Indians duped are now at the Russia-Ukraine war front as part of the mercenary organization Wagner Group. The Russia-Ukraine war has entered its 3rd year with no signs of letting up. Russian troops continue to inch ahead even as both sides bear the brunt of what seems like a never-ending saga. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV.
All right, a worrying situation for many Indian families. Meanwhile, let's focus on Asia now, which is likely to see a massive decline in population by 2050. And the major contributors are expected to be South Korea, Japan and China, while India, Indonesia and Pakistan are seeing a record growth in population. NDTV's Aarti Krishnan takes us through what's happening in these Asian countries and how the demographics have changed.
Now, when I say Asia, markets and streets filled with crowds are perhaps what come to mind, as the continent is known for its growing population. Now, according to recent reports, this is likely to change. Fertility rates across developed nations have dropped. If Asia's population is shrinking, this could have both positive and negative consequences. The strain on resources would reduce, but that also means a reduction in workforce, ballooning retiree population, in turn leading to a possible economic slowdown. A drain on social services, lean tax collections and increased spending on medical services. Army recruitment of these nations are also likely to be impacted. Now, South Korea, Japan and China are majorly the nations which are contributing to the population shrink. Now, South Korea is already seeing a decline in population by 0.36%. It also has the lowest fertility rate in the world. Last year, it saw an 8% decline in fertility rate. The country has a population of 51 million but is on track to that number being halved by the end of this century. Now, what action has been taken? Most of the population incentives brought out by the country have fallen flat. In 2006, a package of 270 billion in incentive had failed, and women coming under intense work pressure is being seen as the key disincentive. Japan, on the other hand, has seen a decline in its population by largest margin in 2023. Births in the country are at a record low, and it has seen a decline of 5.1% in births last year when compared to 2021. The population is predicted to fall below 100 million by 2053. As of now, the population of the country stands at 122 million. More people in Japan are also choosing to stay single, while in most family dynamics, the responsibility of childcare falls on the women alone. China, also once known as the most populous country in the world, is seeing its population drop by 0.15% in 2023 compared to 2022. The population has come down by 2 million people and is predicted to fall further to 1.3 billion people by 2050. It's been 7 straight years that the country has seen a decline in birth rate. It also has at least 12% of its population aged 65 years. Now, are all countries in Asia facing the same fate? Not quite. India is in fact predicted to overtake China as the most populous country, with only 6% of its population aged above 65, and the growth rate is at 1.2%, and the population is predicted to rise by 1.5 billion by 2050. Now, India's neighbor Pakistan as well sees a growth rate of 2.3%. Its population is predicted to grow 366 billion by 2050. India and Pakistan remain bright spots as Asia's working population shrinks.
Well, news now from the US in the run-up to elections there, and President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump both emerged victorious in the Michigan primaries held on Super Tuesday, further cementing anticipation of a rematch between the two. Trump also continued his streak of outperforming opponent Nikki Haley. Vishal with the latest.
US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump have both won the Michigan primaries. It was a bittersweet victory for Biden as he faced significant protest vote over the strong US support for Israel in the Gaza War. On the other hand, the Michigan Republican primary proved to be yet another loss for Nikki Haley ahead of Super Tuesday. Meanwhile, with the election season heating up, Biden's approval ratings have dropped to an all-time low. In December, his ratings had slumped to 38%. Reports suggest that his ratings have been affected by the strong support the US has extended to Israel in its war with Hamas. Some polls say that Trump holds a 6-point lead over Biden. Come March 5, it will be a high-stakes game as 15 states will vote on a day which is called Super Tuesday. From Alabama and California to Vermont and Virginia, voters will line up. So what is this Super Tuesday? Well, it's often seen as a gateway forward to general elections. It's the first opportunity for candidates to hear collective voice from voters. Well, there's no one really challenging both Trump and Biden so far. One challenge for President Biden is the impending US government shutdown. While March 1 is the deadline for a smaller shutdown that is expected to affect about 20% of the US government agencies, the larger shutdown deadline is March 8. There seems to be some relief as reports suggest that a tentative deal has been reached by US leaders to avoid a shutdown. All in all, it is expected to be an action-packed month in US politics.
And finally, meet Ashwinramaswami, the first Gen Z Indian American running for the Georgia Senate seat, all of 24. Ashwin represents the Democratic Party. He's campaigning on platforms that prioritize education, job opportunities and healthcare access. Amrita Gandhi caught up with him for this exclusive.
I have here with me someone who's been in the news. I'm in California, but speaking to me from the other coast is Ashwinramaswami, who is in the news for being the first Gen Z Indian American to contest for state senate in his home state of Georgia. Ashwin, it's very nice to have you here with us. Can you tell me a bit about the significance of this particular contest that you are in?
Good to meet you. I think what's really important about this particular contest is a few things. One is that I am the first Gen Z Indian American to contest any state election in the country, but I would also be the first Gen Z state senator in Georgia. A lot of young people want to make change, and I hope that I can represent those aspirations and show how we can bring new perspectives to our state government. I'm also running against an incumbent who was indicted for his role in the election interference plot in 2020 with Trump. So this election is also about making sure that we are doing what's right for our democracy, protecting our right to vote, and speaking truth to power as well.
Okay. Ashwin, they say that when someone young joins in, and you've actually said that when you join politics, people say you're so young, the first Gen Zer. How has that been received by people?
People realize that we need fresh blood. We need new people to actually come in and work on these issues. I think maybe one challenge is being young. People will be a bit surprised. They're a bit off balance. They think, is this the right kind of person to represent me? And they'll ask you many questions. But I think as long as you're confident in your own experience and you know that you have things that you can bring to the table, that's what helps you win.
Can you tell us a bit about that, growing up, the South Asian context of your life, the Indian American context of your life?
Definitely. So I'm a second generation Indian American. I was born and brought up here, but throughout my life, Indian culture has been so important for me, both in terms of language. I speak Tamil, and also like food and culture and customs, but also philosophy and way of thinking. For me, I've been very interested in Advaita Vedanta, which is a school of philosophy within Hinduism. And for me, that's what's given me my inner strength. And it's what's allowed me to do something as ambitious as running for office now. So I'm very grateful for that heritage.
Well, I think I've asked you everything that I wanted to, Ashwin. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best in your contest. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, a confident young man there will continue to track, all the developments on that front. And that's it for this week on India Global. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.